What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I'm live from my hotel room here at PAX, but I did promise that I would do a TLDR version of the new Cleric and revised Species Unearthed Arcana, so I wanted to do that now, because having reviewed it pretty extensively on the live stream that I did the other day, I have a pretty good handle on how we can do this relatively quickly. Bear in mind, I'm still Ted from Nerd Immersion, so what I consider relatively quickly may not be what the general public does. Anyway, so let's just dive in real quick. So here is the Unearthed Arcana. A reminder, you do get this from going to D&D Beyond. It's the only place that you're able to get it. So there is a whole blog post, and I'm going to clip out the video from my live stream, where they talk about how they have changed species, or from race to species as a terminology. So if you hear me reference that, that's why. There is now a roadmap right here in this gray text block that talks about what we're going to see going forward with Unearthed Arcana playtest or One D&D playtest in the future. There's going to be a revised version of every class from the 2014 Player's Handbook, so unfortunately no Artificer. 48 subclasses, so 4 subclasses per base class, so some may be getting more than they had in the PHB, some are going to have less. New and revised spells, as well as feats, new weapon options for certain classes. It appears that that may be mostly for the warrior classes, the barbarian, fighter, and monk, possibly as a way to balance things out and give them a little more versatility. A new something about home bases, we don't know much about that. Revised encounter building rules, and new and revised monsters. So, that being said, this document contains 3 new species, which is a revised version of the Ardling from the original character Origin, a revised version of the Dragonborn from that original character Origins UA, and a new revised version of the Goliath as well. So if we scroll down, first up here is the Cleric. From the base look at it, again, everything that applied in the previous one will apply here. The new rules to the way cantrips are handled, as well as the new way preparing spells works. For again, if you don't remember, you can prepare, I'll zoom in a little bit more. If, say, at 7th level, you have 4, 3, 3, and 1 as far as your spell slots go, you now prepare 4 first level, 3 second level, 3 third level, 1 fourth level. That's how many spells you prepare per day. It's not a pool where you pick and choose. It is tied to that. Now, that does limit your versatility in higher levels in that you won't be able to pick, like, say, 3 ninth level spells and choose the one most appropriate for the day. You'll now be able to just choose that. But you also, don't forget, can prepare your cantrips so you can swap those out on a long rest. Another thing they said in the article is going forward, all, and including everything so far, everything in the One D&D playtest will get their subclasses at 3rd level. Nobody's getting it at 1st level. The thought process behind this was they wanted to let people just dive into the game and play, as opposed to sitting down and making a game-defining decision for your character at level 1. You'll now get to play with your character in its base form for 2 levels before you ultimately decide where you want to branch off. I get it. It also helps to discourage multi-classing singular level dips in certain classes like Cleric, Warlock, and Sorcerer. So I get it, but I'm not 100% on it. It's kind of weird to be like a Cleric who potentially follows a deity, but you're not really sure what domain. But that being said, there are certain deities that have multiple domains or could fall within multiple domains. I would use Timora as an example, right? Goddess of Luck. You could go more on, like, the luck style things. You could go, like, well, luck is useful in combat, so you could go war domain, you know? Luck surviving through a storm. You could do Tempest. You get the point, right? But anyway, let's keep going. You now only get simple weapons, light armor, medium armor, and shields. You have your starting equipment for a Cleric is 110 gold pieces. They do provide you starting options, but you can just choose whatever you want from that 110 GP. Channel Divinity, now level 1 feature, because they said they wanted the Cleric's iconic ability to turn undead to be available from the start, but they also gave you inherently out the gate a brand new Channel Divinity option called Divine Spark, which essentially, using your Channel Divinity, now you pick somebody within 30 feet of you and you can heal them 2d8 hit points, or if they're an enemy, they make a con save or take 2d8 radiant damage. Also, Channel Divinity has been shifted to proficiency bonus times per long rest. We'll talk about, there's a change there in a minute. There's a new feature at 2nd level called Holy Order, and this kind of lets you define what type of cleric you would like to be. Protector is, you now have proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. So now you could choose if you wanted to go that route. You also have an option here called Thaumaturge, which gives you an extra cantrip, and one of your Channel Divinity options returns on a short rest. So typically, again, proficiency bonus times per long rest, but you now would, every time you take a short rest, get one option back. And they added a new option, which I very much like, called Scholar, which you choose 2 skills from Arcana, History, Nature, Persuasion, and Religion. You are proficient in that skill, and you add your Wisdom modifier as a bonus to any checks you make with that skill, which is pretty interesting because if you were to somehow get yourself expertise and maybe have a decent charisma as well, you could become a better face character than a bard or something else like that. And you could actually, and I like this, it kind of taps into the whole evangelical, I'm a spouting off this kind of stuff priest, and like I'm very convincing to people. And it's just an interesting way you could play a cleric you really couldn't before. Again, subclass at level 3, we have a new feature called Smite Undead at 5th level. This basically replaces Destroy Undead. Instead of just outright killing creatures that fail a saving throw if they're under a certain challenge rating, you now, any undead who fails your turn attempt takes a d8 of radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus. So at 5th level, that's 3d8 to any undead that fails your turn undead attempt. I also should go back and say now when they take, when you go to turn someone, they're now dazed, which is a new condition, but you have a special version of dazed as this cleric option here, which is for 1 minute or until it takes any damage or you're incapacitated, they are dazed, and they can only use their action to dash, and if they move, they have to end themselves further away from you. So they actually can just sit still and do nothing, or if they do want to do anything, they have to run away and they have to end their turn further away from you than they were. So if they fail that saving throw, that happens, and then they also take a d8 radiant damage. I saw a lot of people were upset about this, but I think it's a little bit better because if a higher level undead that you would never be able to normally destroy via Destroy Undead still fails the saving throw, you're still getting a little bit of freebie damage. People are complaining about the name Smite, though, because they worry that it will clash with the Paladin, but I'll remind you, we don't know what the Paladin's features are going to be called, so that could change. There is no more, like, powerful spellcasting or blessed, Divine Strike or whatever. They've replaced that with a 7th level feature called Blessed Strikes, which is basically what we had in Tasha's Cauldron. When a creature takes damage from one of your cantrips or a weapon attack, you can deal an extra d8 radiant damage to them. It is only once per turn, though. Once you deal this damage, you can't use it again until the start of your next turn. You get 9th level, which I thought was very interesting. You get to choose another one of the Holy Orders from 2nd level. Divine Intervention now comes online at 11th level, and it functions exactly the same way as it did in the player's handbook. However, now it's a variable time frame. It comes back in 2d6 days, so if you roll very low, you could get your Divine Intervention back in 2 days if you succeed. You now get Greater Divine Intervention, which was the 20th level feature at 18th level, and it comes back in 2d4 days, and at 20th level, you get to basically pick an epic boon as per usual. We have selected options, and the domain what we were given in here is the Life domain, which honestly is pretty much unchanged from the player's handbook. You do get 1 less level worth of domain spells, because you now get your subclass at 3rd level. So Lesser Restoration, Prayer of Healing, Mass Healing Word, Revivify, Aura of Life, Death Word, Greater Restoration, Mass Cure Wounds. Disciple of Life is pretty much the same when you cast a spell. When a spell you cast with a spell slot restores hit points to a creature, they gain additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. The wording here was changed so that it doesn't apply to Goodberry, for example, because it's when you heal a creature with it, and it's also on the turn you cast it, so it doesn't like persist over healing that may last multiple turns. Preserve Life gives you a new option for your Channel Divinity. Again, similar to what they had before, 5 times your Cleric level. You can choose any creatures within 30 feet, divide the healing up amongst them, and the hit points can't heal them up above half hit points, but that's more or less the same as it was in the player's handbook. 10th level, Blessed Healer. When you cast a spell slot that heals another creature, you heal hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. And 14th level, Supreme Healing, where you no longer have to roll, you just heal the maximum amount. That was, again, just because of the way the subclasses have adjusted. It used to be 17th level, it's now 14th level. As I said, we do have new versions. They tapped more into the bestial nature of the Ardling here. Basically, they choose an ancestry, and there are 4 of them on screen here: Climber, Flyer, Racer, Swimmer. and you get something based on that. The climber gets a climb speed equal to their regular speed, and when they do damage once per turn with an unarmed strike, they can increase that damage equal to their proficiency bonus. This is good, although at first I thought it was every time. It is only once per turn, so it's less useful than I thought. The flyer gets gliding, basically like a gliding ability. When they fall at least 10 feet, they can use their reaction to fall safely and take no damage, and the jump action, they have advantage on that ability check. The racer and the swimmer are probably my two favorite from this. The racer is when you take the dash action, your speed increases by 10 times your proficiency bonus when you use that. So there are potential options for where you could chain a bunch of dashes and do like go really, really far. And the swimmer can hold their breath for an hour, half of swim speed, and resistance to cold damage. They know Thaumaturgy, but then they can swap that out with any divine magic spell from the divine spell list on a long rest, and it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, their choice, and they get proficiency in perception. The Dragonborn was updated based on a lot of the feedback that now their breath weapon, instead of just being an action, is you can choose to replace, when you take the attack action, replace one of your attacks with a breath weapon. So if you have multiple attacks, you can use that as well. If you only have the singular attack, nothing really changes for you. It is still the D10 damage that scales upwards up to a maximum of 4d10. However, you do now get to choose when you breathe your breath weapon, whether it's a cone or a line. So on the actual activation of it, so one turn it could be a cone, the next turn it could be a line, a 15-foot cone or a 30-foot line, which is nice versatility there. They still have the damage resistance tied to the breath weapon. They have dark vision, and at 5th level, they get a bonus action activation of Draconic Flight with a 10-minute fly speed equal to their actual speed once per long rest. They also stated that this is supposed to be the generic Dragonborn, whereas the ones from Fizzbands are supposed to basically exist alongside it as very specified versions, where this is the sort of general Dragonborn, whatever. Goliath got an update now where they basically, instead of just being tied directly to the way the stone giants were, there's now a version of Goliath based on the type of giant that you would like to be. So we have multiple ancestries here, and basically you have access to this ability, proficiency bonus times per long rest, and it activates in a certain way. So if you're Cloud Giant, you get a bonus action teleport 30 feet. Again, proficiency bonus times per long rest. Fire Giant is when you hit a target with an attack, you can deal an extra d10 fire damage. Frost is when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you deal an extra d6 cold damage, but their movement speed is reduced by 10. Hill Giant is when you hit a larger, smaller creature with an attack roll, you can knock it prone with no saving throw. Stone's Endurance is what we normally have for the Goliath. Roll a d12, add your Constitution modifier, and reduce the damage by that amount. And then Storm Giant is when a creature damages you within 60 feet. You can use a reaction to deal a d8 thunder damage to them. Also at 5th level, you have an opportunity to grow yourself to large size as a bonus action. It lasts for 10 minutes. You have advantage on strength checks, and your speed increases by 10 feet during that time period. And powerful build, you still have that, although some of it has shifted slightly. You have advantage on saving throws to end the grappled condition on yourself. And you also count as a size larger for carrying capacity. They did give us a couple of new feats, which are basically just the epic feats here, which is the Epic Boon of Fate, which is required for the mages or the priests. Whenever a creature within 60 feet of you makes a d20 test, you can roll a d10 and apply it as a bonus or penalty to that d20 roll. And that is once per short. You can't use this again until you roll initiative or finish a short or long rest. The Boon of Spell Recall, again, mage or priest. When you cast a spell you have prepared without, you can cast a spell you have prepared without expending a spell slot as long as it's 5th level or lower. That's once per long rest. Or just for the priest group only, flat out true sight of 60 feet. They also have added a sort of changelog section here to the rules glossary, and they reminded us that anything that, if it doesn't appear in either rules glossary, you're supposed to continue using the 2014 Player's Handbook version. If it appeared in the last version and it hasn't appeared again in this version, you're continue to use whatever appeared in the last rules glossary. Or if it's been updated here, you're supposed to use the most current. Do not consider anything to be taken out or removed unless they specifically state that it has been or been replaced with a newer version. So, the only thing I don't like is some of these are literally very minor grammatical changes into the way things are written, and you might go hunting and pecking through this and have to do a side-by-side comparison to see what changed when fundamentally nothing mechanically adjusted, but you need to just look at the wording is slightly different. So I think like a track change with either something highlighted in red or stricken through to show what has been actually changed would be more beneficial. So the aid spell was adjusted. It used to provide you extra hit points and increase your hit point maximum, but it was only 3 creatures. It is now up to 6 creatures, but it provides 5 temporary hit points. Additionally, when you cast it from a higher level, you can add more temporary hit points. I like it. I think I'm okay with this overall. I never actually considered using aid as a means to heal people. People are telling me it's a way they used to pop up multiple people in one turn with a 2nd level spell, but I think overall I'm okay with the changes. Let's see. What else was changed? The attack action, they just adjusted the wording here to make it a little bit more easier to understand that you can equip or unequip a weapon when you make an attack. So you could attack and then unequip, or attack, punch and then equip, things like that. Banishment has been adjusted now. It's still a charisma saving throw, and it says you attempt to send one creature to another plane of existence. They can fail the saving throw willingly now, which was not an option before. While in the demi-plane, they are considered incapacitated. But now at the end of each of their turns, they get to repeat the saving throw to try to succeed on it. When it ends, they reappear in the place they left. But if the spell lasts on a target for 1 minute and the target is an aberration, celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend, they are returned to like a plane tied to them. But the only downside is some people are saying like if you were in another plane of existence, you couldn't banish somebody home because it specifically states which ones can be sent elsewhere. And it still has the opportunity to target additional creatures at higher levels. Let's see, what else was adjusted? The dazed condition that we mentioned was added here, which is now when you're dazed, you can move or take an action on your turn, not both, and you can't take bonus actions or reactions. So a lot of us think this may be tied to the future weapon attacks we might be expecting, or possibly adjustments to the way the monk is handled, maybe stunning strike or dazed strike. We don't know how that's going to work. But more on that later. A couple of spells shifted schools, as you can see here with these asterisks. Most of the healing spells have been moved to be abjuration spells. Blindness, deafness is now a transmutation. Prayer of healing, you can see all of these healing ones are now seemingly abjuration, not evocation. Let's see. Guidance was adjusted now, and I like this much better. It is still a reaction when a creature fails an ability check, but now it is limited to them being within 10 feet of you. And then if they fail, you choose to add a d4 to it to possibly turn it in a failure into a success. Previously, it had gone through some various changes. This is much better. They limited the range, but it still functions only on a failure, and it possibly turns it into a success by allowing them to roll a d4. I wouldn't change this. I like this a lot as it is. All right, continuing through. Let's see. We have the influence action was changed, and basically they adjusted a little bit about how the skills, what skills are tied to which creature. They gave you basically an option for setting the DC, and the way the outcome works was adjusted. For the most part, that was, I'd say, the majority. They used to have options for what the different DCs, how they'd feel. They also kind of flat out explain that it's not mind control, and that there are some situations where a hostile creature just will not be able to be influenced. Let's see. They adjusted some stuff on the long rest here. They basically have clarified some things here. They say if you're exhausted, you reduce your exhaustion level by 1. It also says after you finish a long rest, you must wait at least 16 hours before starting another one. I think that was just clarification on, the once per 24-hour period. But they also adjusted what can interrupt a rest. A rest can only be interrupted by combat, by casting a spell of higher than 0 level, which means you now can cast as many cantrips as you'd like, as long as it doesn't affect combat during a long rest, or 1 hour of walking or other physical exertion. They also have a new option about resuming a long rest. So you can resume a long rest immediately after an interruption. If you do so, the rest requires one additional hour to perform, one additional hour to finish per interruption. So that's really cool that now we have kind of mechanics around, like, if your rest gets interrupted by a combat, once your combat is complete, it only takes an additional hour to once you resume to complete the long rest. I don't think there was much else here. Oh, the magic action now also states when you take the magic action, you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, or you use a feature or magic item that requires a magic action. The reason why is the Cleric's Channel Divinity says you use a magic action, so that may tie into things that come up later. So that's a small adjustment there. Prayer of Healing was adjusted pretty significantly. You choose a number of creatures equal to your spellcasting ability modifier now. Still takes 10 minutes, but those creatures now gain the benefit of a short rest in addition to healing 2d10 hit points and can't be affected by this spell again until they finish a long rest. So this kind of is like a miniature version of Catnap with also healing built in, and then for each level above 3rd, it adds a d8 hit points to it. I really like this change. I usually would never use Prayer of Healing, but I might now based on the adjustments that have been added here. Priest's packs were also limited. They cost 33 gold pieces, and they added kind of the what's going to be contained inside one. Resistance was also adjusted, very much to my appreciation here. Resistance has basically been shifted to function identically to the way the new version of Guidance is. However, now it works for a saving throw as opposed to, Guidance being for ability checks. So if a creature within 10 feet of you fails a saving throw, you can use your reaction to add a d4 to their saving throw, possibly turning a failure into a success. I'm also very hopeful that this will be how they fix True Strike going forward and do the same thing for True Strike, but make it a d4 to attack rolls. Also, Spiritual Weapon was adjusted, much to many people's disappointment, to now be considered Concentration. However, the damage has now scaled the normal way, so it is Concentration for a minute for Spiritual Weapon, but the damage now increases by a d8 for every slot above 3rd, as opposed to every other slot, essentially. I don't think there was too much more here. They did adjust True Sight to now say that you can discern the true form of any creature. Previously, I think it said the true form of shape changers or objects transformed by magic, so you can now see the true form of any creature. And I believe that is everything for this. I'm going to just scroll up to the top and make sure I didn't miss anything from their list of stuff that they adjusted here, which I think we talked about all of it, but let's just confirm. Aid, attack, banishment. Oh, the grappled condition was adjusted. Let's go look at that again. Guidance, we talked about influence. The light weapon property, there wasn't anything major for the light weapon property. They just basically clarified. It seemed like it was so that you couldn't be like switching hands with weapons, like have a dagger in this hand and a rapier in this hand, and then attack with this one, swap, and then attack with this one. It needs to be like a different weapon. That's nothing too crazy there. Other than that, I think we talked about everything. We'll just go look at the grappled condition real quick, was the last one that I glanced over. But I don't believe there was anything too crazy on this one. Because I looked through this during the actual live stream, and I don't believe there was much. Oh, it's this last little bit here. It used to say the condition also ends if the grappler is incapacitated or if something removes you from the grapple's range without using your speed. They seem to have dropped the without using your speed option from that. So there you go, folks. That is my TLDR version. It's probably one of the shortest ones I've done of this. Reminder that the next coming Unearthed Arcana should be the remaining two priest classes we believe we're going to get based on the conversations they've had in other videos. That we'll be getting the druid and the paladin in the next one, as possibly some more adjustments to rules and maybe feats or things like that. So I gotta say, overall, I'm happy with pretty much every change made here. I love the adjustments to guidance and resistance. I think during my live stream, several people said they didn't even know resistance was a spell because they just glanced over it and never looked at it. This actually makes it something on my radar. Prayer of Healing, I think, has just received general improvements. I get the change to Spiritual Weapon. I don't love it, but it also makes me worry because I feel like that means Spirit Guardians is going to get nerfed pretty hard, and that's my favorite spell. But overall, I do think the Cleric came out as a general win on this. I know people are upset about the no first level domain, but I think generally the Cleric is, I think, possibly even more powerful now, or at least given more options to choose to do different things, allows you to play Clerics in a different way. And it's also interesting because the way the Sacred Order kind of aspect works, or Sacred Oath, whatever it's called, we could both play Life Domain Clerics, and we could play drastically differently. If you chose the one that makes you the scholar and you become the face of the party, and I choose the one that makes me the protector, where I get medium or heavy armor and martial weapons, we could both be Life Domain Clerics, and it'd be a drastically different experience for both of us. And I really, really like what they're doing with that. I mean, again, we still don't know what the future holds, and things can obviously shift and change, but from what a lot of the videos, which I did review during that live stream, it does appear that they are looking at the feedback, and they actually gave us a lot of transparency into how they determine which things need to be cut, or which things need to be kept as they were, or slightly tweaked or adjusted. And reminder that the genesis of this Unearthed Arcana, on top of giving us the Cleric, was also to give us kind of the feedback from the Character Origins UA. So they haven't really looked at the stuff that came from the Expert Classes UA. That should be probably covered in the next Unearthed Arcana drop. So we'll see what they liked and didn't like about the Bard, Rogue, or Ranger. And I really appreciate that they are telling us how it's scored as far as satisfaction goes. And they basically said that things of 70% or above are basically considered to be pretty good as they were. If they're like 80 or 90% above, they basically don't touch them when whatever was in the Unearthed Arcana ends up in the final product. Things of 60 to 70% need some serious tweaking, and if it's scored under 60%, they basically just throw it away and don't look at it again. Again, maybe not the best way to go about with the design part, but we at least have an understanding of how things work. So if you really don't like anything, and they have that strongly disagree, strongly agree, and you really want it to not hopefully be in there, you're going to want to go for the worst possible option. Whereas if you really like it, you're going to want to go for the best possible option. So either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you're at PAX Unplug, I hope to see you here. And yeah, I will be bouncing around throughout the day, so come and find me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.